Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
Hi, everyone. I'm Britt with Rock and Flux, and I am joined today by the band Creux Lies. Thank you guys for being with me today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So just to start out, let's go through, I'm going to say from my left to right from my screen. So that's starting with you, Ian, and let's introduce all of you. And then once you're all introduced, let's talk about the history of how you came to form Creux Lies and came about.
Okay. Hello. My name is Ian, and I'm the singer.
I'm Kyle. I play bass. Hi, I'm Dara, and I play keyboards.
And I'm Barry, and I play the guitar.
Who wants to give me your history? Just a brief history lesson on how you all started playing music together and writing together. And you're all based in California. Are you all based in California?
Yeah.
All Sacramento area. Yeah. Do you want to
Go for it, Kyle.
I say we let Barry do it.
Oh, okay. Go, Barry.
Oh man, I'm being railroaded here. So Ian and I, a long time ago, started another band. And slowly over time, we just kind of honed in our vision and what we wanted this to be, and eventually found Kyle and Dara. And it was kind of kismet. We all just kind of had a singular direction and focus. And I think a lot of our kind of eclectic interests, music-wise, came together to form this kind of interesting thing we have going on now. So our first record came out in 2018, The Hearth. And since then, we've released a 7-inch and another LP called Goodbye Divine. And we're just slowly evolving and figuring things out and seeing where we want to take our direction next musically. So
what would you all describe your style as? I've seen it written as post-punk, which I feel like is the catch-all. And I mean, you have an 80s influence. If I had to describe you to people, I would say you're kind of similar to Depeche Mode and like New Order. And there's something else that I can't put my finger on that's a little bit like, because you have an edge to some of the stuff that you're doing, but you also have like that 80s new wave feel. So if you had to describe it to somebody, like what would you say?
Yeah, I pretty much the bands that you kind of listed off, I say it's like a mashup of those with like a little bit of maybe The Cure in there as well. Dark 80s is a common term that's used, or our favorite is California Party Goth.
I think maybe what another part of that kind of like edge you're hearing though is, I like a lot of the 90s shoegaze bands. I like the Smashing Pumpkins a lot. I like that big textural wall of sound, and some of the more like the modern like new gaze bands like Nothing and Whir and bands like that kind of bring a heavier side. So I think infusing those elements into the classical post-punk dark wave genre make for an interesting combo.
Definitely, yeah, and I hear that for sure. So you're all and you mentioned already, so your first album was The Hearth. It came out in 2018. Some of your most popular songs on Spotify, Portals and Eulogy, are from that album. So they're still like really more popular even today. For people who are starting out just kind of listening to your music, what songs would you choose for them to start listening to if you had to tell them one? You can all debate this if you need to.
Well, I think an obvious easy one would be Portals. It's definitely one of our more popular ones, but I feel like that song does kind of have a lot of the elements that make up a lot of our songs within that song, especially because it's like a 7-minute track. But, like big sweeping epic things, but with pop hooks and, some of the hard edge you mentioned kind of comes in that song too, but it's well as melodic, pretty moments. So that's definitely one I would say.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other reason why you all would choose that you want to chime in with before we give it a little brief listen?
I would also advise maybe listening to a track like I Wish I Would, Was You, or Misunderstanding off of Goodbye Divine, because I think Portals captures sort of the larger sound, and there is also a very pop synth kind of 80s electro kind of feel in some of our other stuff, and I would hate that to be the only example that they got from our dynamic.
Well, let's give it a brief listen. So yeah, I mean, I think that song is a great example, but I do understand what you're saying with like, I Wish I Was You. You know, another one you didn't mention off Goodbye Divine that I thought was really interesting is Renegade, because it has a lot of different elements that I think your other songs maybe don't have. Because for me, it almost is like, has like a little, and I mean, the name is Renegade, so I'm assuming this is purposeful, but I would like you all to chime in on this. It has like a little hint of a Western vibe to it, but then it's also got like this ethereal, you know, dance portion of it. How did that song come about, and what made you write it? Because and am I right in what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I want to hear what Ian has to say about it, because that came out of his brain.
Well,
Were you watching Young Guns?
I do like Westerns. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a affinity for just, you know, like old country and folk music a little bit. I come from like a family that listens to a lot of that, but I wouldn't call myself a country Western connoisseur by any means. But regardless, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I mean, I come up with music in a pretty bizarre way. Most of the time I dream it, or I wake up at 3:00 in the morning and it's kind of like a riff pops into my head. And I think with Renegade, I woke up and I just sometimes, you know, have my acoustic guitar and I'm just kind of playing away and stuff. And I have this vibe, like, what if I got this like gallopy kind of like Western vibe in a electro dark songs? I've never heard that before. So I started kind of like working on that gallop, that bum bada 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 bum, and it's like, yeah, that sounds like a horse.
Of course.
It evokes the image.
How did that song come about? So you wrote it, and then did you all like how, and honestly, how do you write in general? Like, Ian, do you kind of start it off, or Barry, do you start it off and then everybody kind of chimes in, or what is your writing process like? And how did that song end up finishing off? Did you write the whole thing, Ian, or did everybody kind of have input on it?
We'll each bring in parts or riffs or structures, sometimes complete songs, and, you know, go through them, see what we're vibing with. In the case of Goodbye Divine, everything on that was really interesting because we started pre-2020 just with a few tracks, but the majority of it was done over Zoom or, you know, email, us all adding to a Logic file and sending it back and forth. And especially Renegade, that was an interesting one because the structure was so weird. I couldn't gallop that riff like Ian wanted to at first, and I feel like it finally all came together when we started layering in like that more ethereal vibe and these like weird effects and synth layers and pads and things like that. That's kind of what made it that our quintessential sound after that. But yeah, we do work from, I guess, either things that come about in the room or from things we bring in from home.
Cool. And I was actually going to ask that too, like what your typical recording and writing process was, and then if and how COVID affected that. Because I know that Goodbye Divine came out in 2021. So I figured most likely it was somehow affected by that. Before that, did you all kind of write more together, like in the same space, or were you always doing things separately?
It's always together, I'd say. Like it would be like what Barry said is somebody might come in and say, hey, check out this cool little riff I made, or hey, here's like bits and pieces of a song. And then we would just hit record on our phone and we would just play the same thing for like, I don't know, like 30 minutes. And then we'd pick out the little bits that we liked and kind of just develop it from there. But yeah, the pandemic definitely really impacted that because we couldn't do that. So, it was a lot of consensus over text of what we liked and things like that, and getting on video calls and stuff. So
by the time we got to the final mixing stuff, though, we were kind of able to meet. We still kind of were sparse on being all together, but we would meet up with Pat, our engineer, and all that, and fine tune stuff, and add. Yeah, that might be time where things get added.
How did it affect? So, did you all perform live a lot before that, or were you more focused on recording and writing? And if you were performing, how did it affect? Like, I mean, because everything kind of stalled out. So, did that part of it affect you all, or were you just focused more on the writing part?
Well, prior to 2020, yeah, we were doing shows for those 2 years. Maybe?
Yeah, we had just got back from a big run of shows. We had played Wave Gotic Treffen the year before the pandemic, and we had done a bunch of shows with
went to the East Coast.
Was that
New York?
Oh yeah, yeah. We played Murder Crows in the East Coast in New York. So yeah, we were playing a lot of shows. So I mean, just like every other touring band out there, it all came to a halt. So.
And I did notice, so Goodbye Divine, you released originally in 2021, but then you re-released it the next year and you added a few songs to it. Can you tell me why that happened and what made you decide to re-release it that way?
Money.
Well,
be honest, it's okay.
Definitely it had to do. Yeah, there's other stuff, but like we had more songs, and they were songs that we had gotten. I think both of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were done already.
Yeah, so that we had them as part of kind of Goodbye Divine, but they just weren't fitting in the full story of that record. But they still kind of fit adjacent to it, so they're almost like addendums to that story.
Are you all like? And everybody has a different feeling on this. Every band, every person I talk to does. Some people are like very singles focused and they're not worried as much about putting out albums, and others are very album focused and they're not, like, they want that cohesion. From that perspective, why did you all choose to add a re-release of the album versus just adding those two as like singles that came out, a month or so apart?
That was a record label decision.
Got it. Okay.
That was a way. So the kind of the bare brass of that situation is that the record came out. Well, this is a big story, but some of it we can't get into. But
yeah, that's okay.
We had been working with the European label for this album, and the first time we worked with them, the album came out a little flat on the push because it was right out of COVID. And I think everybody was trying to figure out how to sell a record or do anything in the music industry for a while. And so going back in from a marketing perspective, it was like, how do we get these songs out in front of people? It didn't really, land the right way. So we decided to, as a unit with the label, to put the album out again as the deluxe version, and add a couple of the ancillary tracks to try and, go like, hey, actually this record came out, because
right.
It was such a tricky time to do anything with music, and that still is, right? But that's why, I mean, to answer your larger question about keeping a theme or rather than doing singles. Like I think like our artist's heart would like to deliver a more thought through and produced story through an album. But I think as we move forward into what music has become, that's becoming a side story to what the consumer experience is for music. So I would expect to see more singles coming from Creux Lies as the future goes. And also, as like Barry said earlier, and this also plays right into what we were talking about during COVID, we all had time to kind of explore music on our own. I mean, for me, I wrote like a bunch of disco funk goth songs that made absolutely no sense at all. And I was like, these are going to be great Creux Lies songs. And then after kind of like sharing, I was like, what the fuck? This is not going to make any sense at all. I think they're great songs, but that might be some other day. But with that experience, I think we realized that we have even a wider dynamic of music to offer, which is at once great for our artist heart, a little tricky for the consumer to be like, what the fuck is Creux Lies sometimes? Because they are Depeche Mode and they are New Order and they are The Cure and then they are a shoegaze band and then they are a fucking country western band, or they are a surf band or they're a bunch of weirdos wearing shorts and doing whatever, so it's like, but I like that because I don't want people to be able to go like, they're clearly in the goth scene and they're doing what we want them to do. Like, I don't ever want to be that band, never one day. So I think the cool thing about the future of Creux Lies is we all sort of are identifying that we have this big dynamic panacea of interests. We all come from different places, and why not utilize those differences to sort of create great music, whatever it looks like. So I would say expect more singles that are going to be very different as we go forward. And we'll try hard to create stories as we go through that also with our next records coming out.
But see, I think the story part of it is like the country part of it, right? Because most country songs like tell a story in some way, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with changing it up and having different styles, even on the same album. I think, historically people have done that. And the reality is, like, most of us like music of various genres, various styles. And depending on our mood, we'll listen to one or the other. You know what I mean? So I think I think that's art as a whole, right? And I most of the people that I talk to don't wanna pigeonhole themselves because there might be a day that you wanna write a Western song, and there might be a day that you wanna write a pop song, and there might be a day you wanna write something else, and a good song is a good song.
I agree with you. I think the trickiness of that is anytime you're in a scene, a genre, and to push the boundaries of what is sort of like, like I can take this example because I have a history of playing punk and hardcore, and I did that for a long time before I did this. But to push yourself too far out of what is the comfort zone for what our scene or culture wants to accept, it can really, like you walk down a pretty dangerous plank at that point.
Yeah, but I will say that I think the whole, like, post-punk world, which I feel like has become a catch-all term for what is happening now, is so like, that group of people, including myself, are so much more open to the different types of styles because when you think about it, it's like there's a lot of different music that's all coming together that all of those people like, right? You have the goth, you've got the more like rocky bands, you have the new wave, you have the dark wave, and it's all kind of mixing in to create that overall scene. But I feel like people are very receptive to being different. And for me, like, I call this rock and flux. And a lot of the bands, like, some people would probably say, like, well, you're not talking to rock bands. For me, I am because, and we'll get into this question later, but like, for me, rock is an attitude. It's, I'm going to pave my own way. I'm going to do what I want to do and have originality and be artistic and be who I am. That's for me what rock is about, right? And some people just think it's like someone with a guitar and like just a classic rock band. But to me, that's not necessarily true. So I think nowadays, especially, people are becoming more open to having that variety that maybe they wouldn't have before. But that's also because of streaming and all the other ways we can listen to music. Like before, you bought the album on a CD and that was it. Or, even before that, the other like vinyl and other methods. Now you make your own playlist if you want to, So I think it does change people's mentalities a little bit.
I think coming from like, being a elder millennial and even like Gen X, albums were extremely important. And I think that story and hearing it from start to finish and those albums that you can listen to cover without any skips, those are important. And I think we come from that place too. So it is like an adaptation to exist in this digital streaming single landscape that feels really foreign, and like an element of that preciousness of the record is lost. So I think we're trying to preserve that and keep a foot in both worlds.
Yeah. And I think that is common from the band and the artist perspective, right? Because a lot of people want to put together ultimately a body of work. How they do that now might look different. You may release singles and then put them together on an album. You may do an album and then later on do like a re-release with added songs to it, right? And I think that's up for debate on how that happens. But I think ultimately people, I don't know, I think it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Like the streaming is great because people find you. Like that's how I found you all, right? Is Spotify. You can listen to an album on Spotify, but maybe that's not necessarily the focus. But there still are people who are interested in that. And then you have the whole vinyl resurgence, and apparently CDs are coming back. I had a whole argument with people. I didn't argue with them, but they were arguing on my TikTok the other day because I just like joined TikTok. And one of the first posts I did was like, CDs are coming back, because I've had discussions with multiple bands and they're like, well, we want to print our music. Vinyl's difficult to print sometimes because all the pressing plants are so overrun because everyone wants to do it now. So, we're looking at CDs and tapes and everything like that. So there is starting to be a demand for that again. And people were arguing about it. And I found it interesting. People have very strong feelings on that, apparently.
The next generation, yeah, like talk to younger people, like, because to them, to anyone that's a teenager or even like 20, that was already on its way out by the time you were coming of age. So to them, that is kind of different, retro. That's something they didn't experience.
Right. But it's weird because like they're really into 90s culture, which is weird for me because like I'm an elder millennial too. So it's like I grew up, like we bought CDs. That's what we did. And now, like I mean, scrunchies were a thing when I was a kid and they went totally away. And now like all that 90s style is coming back. And I never thought it would, but it is. And it was funny because it was a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old that were going at it with each other over whether or not CDs were coming back. And the 20-year-old was like, I have a CD collection. You're out of your mind. The 17-year-old was like, no, like there's no way. So I was like, I am a lot older than both of you. And you're arguing about it. But, I'm glad people are talking about it. It sparks, I like a little debate. And if people are talking about music, I think it's a good thing. So it was interesting. But
and I think for consumers, just in general now, people like having a physical thing. People like collecting things, having something they can hold up on TikTok, even just that.
Well, and if you think about when you went and bought an album, no matter what the method was, right? You felt like you had a piece of it. You had the artwork, you had what came with it. You felt like you had a piece of that was yours. Now that feeling is gone. And there was something about that, right? So like obviously you still have merch and you still have other ways to do that, but I don't know. Will people ever feel that way again? I don't know. Maybe they do when they buy vinyl or other stuff, but it's interesting. So, and your most recent release is I wanted to talk to you about this too, is a remix album. And I just wanted to ask you all, like, how did you decide to do that? It is becoming, especially within this scene, like a more popular thing to do. And I love that all of those bands, like you're all working together. I think that's really cool. So you have Twin Tribes and Traders. Those are two bands that I've talked to on this show. What made you choose the bands that are on that, and how did it come about?
Well,
They were our friends.
yeah,
Really.
they're bands that excited us.
Yeah, they're bands that we've either played shows with and we knew, and we got along with. We liked their style, and it just, I don't know, it just kind of felt right. I guess I'd say, it made sense.
Yeah. I think it turned out really cool. I really like the remix albums people are doing because it's so interesting to see how different bands like will take a song and what they'll do with it. I think it's really cool.
I really like doing remixes a lot, like myself, and I think that was like some of the reasoning for me to really want to push that idea, because I've had the opportunity, even since we've done Creux Lies, to remix a lot of really cool artists, and even some stuff that didn't come out. The Missing Persons remix
that's
that I
right.
did, I did a remix for Missing Persons.
It was out for like a second.
They put it out, and we even made a video for it and everything. But I feel like there was something fishy going on with Cleopatra and Missing Persons that made it.
Oh man,
you can still actually find it on our Bandcamp. Actually,
okay, look for it.
But the Christian Death one that's even one of our most streamed songs.
Yeah.
That was a really cool that just the ability to, they basically just sent the vocal track, and it was like, cool, I could do anything with this song. So I mean, it just
Was that on the Halloween 2019 soundtrack? Because I saw it says Halloween 2019 on there, or is it just
Yeah,
like the
it was
song?
just part of like a Cleopatra Halloween thing.
Got it. Okay, it did turn out really cool. Like that is a cool song.
Thanks, appreciate that. Yeah, we had a good time with it. I think that was kind of like the idea, because it was just like I wanted to see what these other artists that we kind of respect, like their writing style, and they all are so dynamic, all of them, And I mean, like a couple of, like, I mean, the Traders one was like a total fucking like,
Yeah,
I mean, I love fucking rave music. I love house and jungle and all of it. And when they sent, I'm not kidding, that I literally went out loud, yes, when I fucking heard it and I listened to it. It's just like it was so cool to be like, wow, what a cool interpretation of this dude kind of low track with The Becoming, So
yeah,
that is,
I do love that. It is really cool.
Like, mixing it up with people that you respect, and we're so lucky that we are homies with some great people, great artists, So
Yeah, that is something too. Like everyone in this scene that I've talked to is super nice, super cool. Which isn't always the case, but it has been really, really refreshing to talk to everybody, because I just feel like everyone's really down to earth and just cool. So that definitely helps. And we talked about your live show earlier. So I always am curious, bands that do heavily do like a lot of electronic pieces, what could people expect from your live show? And how do you work to make sure, or not even make sure, like, do you care that it sounds exactly like the album? How do you kind of work all of that out? Because I know a lot of work does go into making sure that it sounds, people, will understand that it's pretty much the same, if not better.
Well, I feel like the live versions of our songs tend to have a little more like energy, did you say, to it?
Because we have the ability to kind of, because we do have a backline and we have a synth system that sort of like generates, especially the drums, right? So we don't have a live drummer. So the ability to kind of kick up that danceability and the low end, the energetic feel of the show, we can kick that up a bit. The record, we're trying to like feel the full spectrum of music and sound, and somehow take 100 layers of music and put them into a listenable format, which is, you can't do that for this style of music. It doesn't seem to make sense in a live performance setting. You want to ante up a little bit on the feel of it, so for the live room. So that's one part of it. The other advantage that we have is that we do have, software and systems running a lot of stuff. So we're able to get a pretty cool light show that can sync up, and we can, do some pretty fun production style things on stage. The other part of it too is like, again, I'm a punk rock frontman. So I like, I'm not a subdued kind of person on stage. Like that animal has never been caged and will never be. And so like, it's no matter how doldrum the sound might be, I'm going to be partying and pissed, the whole way. So it's just, that's how it is.
Plus, we're playing, loud amps and stuff too. We're not playing guitars through, some kind of line out scenario. Like,
We do when sometimes, but yeah.
right. Yeah. But, when you can feel the amps in the room, as opposed to, the way we record it, it's a little bit, I guess, less atmospheric, less effects. It's fits in the mix a little bit better. Live, we can really hit them with that wall.
Yeah. Have people been surprised? Do you feel like people get surprised when they see you live, or do you feel like it's what they would expect?
I feel like people are surprised every
Yeah,
time they come to see
every
us.
time, even if they've seen us.
I think they're surprised because I think a lot of people don't know, and I'm not knocking a lot of bands because I love some bands that just the vibe is subdued and dark and intense and mysterious, and that's the positioning of it. And then there are a lot of bands that just sort of rest on these laurels that they can go up and perform in a way that is just sort of the status quo, and it comes off incredibly flat. And I think people, myself, as a lifetime concert goer, I want to be entertained when I go to a show. I mean, and so like I feel a responsibility to make sure that I'm like every single night, if I have a little tiny bit of energy, I'm going to spend it on stage, for those people that come out and take care
Right.
of them,
Yeah, that makes sense. One question I ask everybody who comes on this show, and I was talking about it a little bit earlier, but I always like to know what everybody else thinks. So the whole branding of this is rock isn't dead, it's in flux, right? Because it's always changing. I would like to know all of your thoughts on that. Because like I was saying earlier, I don't think that it's dead. I just think it's different, and maybe people define it differently. So I would like to know how you all define it and kind of your opinions on that. Like for me, Depeche Mode is rock music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's the attitude, it's doing what you love to do and paving your own path, so to speak. And I think people get too hung up on it's got to be like guitars and drums and just like the run of the mill
or radio rock or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's kind of more of an attitude, because I've been to shows where it's just someone singing and one person on the keyboard, and it's the most rock show I've ever seen. And so it's another example of what you were saying, like you don't need what traditional is rock. And yeah, I would say it is always in flux because it's ever evolving as society changes, and
it's all cyclical.
Exactly. There's always going to be this new kind of thing, and people who think like, oh, rock was only the 1970s. They're not rock really anymore by today's standards, because something new's come out, and that's what's rock in the moment.
I would almost venture to say like the stuff that's not on the radio is actually more than the stuff that is, because like the whole point of rock is like sticking it to the man and doing what you think is right and not doing what is necessarily like the commonly accepted path or thought process, right? And I think we need that more now than ever because everybody wants to put a label on everything and everyone wants to stick everybody in a box. And it's like, I don't know, like rock and roll is everything. You can't put it in a box. Like that is what it's supposed to be. So
I think that label rock though has just been worked to death, and it's been mislabeling things for so long. Like you're right, like radio rock is not to me rock. Like if I hear another Imagine Dragons Jeep commercial song on the radio, that's not rock to me, and that's fine for a lot of people, but it lacks that attitude, and it lacks any sort of like independent underground ingenuity, raw attitude.
Yeah,
it's just
the passion,
polished corporate, whatever. So I think it is taking a step back, because I struggle with that term rock. Like if I hear the term rock, I kind of cringe a little bit, but seeing it reframed the way you're talking about it, it makes sense to me.
See, I'm doing the right thing. I'm bringing it back. I have to.
I don't think I ever cringe with the word rock myself. I when I hear the word rock, I think the first thing I think of is like somebody like Chuck Berry. That to me is what rock is. It's like rock and roll. It's like it's it's not even, it's a political mental thing only in the reaction of it. It's a more of a body innate behavioral thing that makes you need to move. And by moving through the music, you also want to move against things that are around you. It's like Chuck Berry made people want to dance in ways that was subversive and wrong. And that ideology is like the outcome of rocking, of feeling like you want to rock and roll. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a body thing. It's a body mind.
That's what it's about. Yeah, it is. It's not about going with the mold, which is, but that is a dichotomy though, because like when you talk about like the radio rock bands and what rock has become mainstream wise, quote unquote, it isn't about what you were just saying. People don't think like that necessarily.
Sure. And like going back to what Barry said, I think the cringe factor comes from any kind of thing that, you know, our unfortunately consumer and capitalist side of music and art can do to a thing that is so important. I mean, I again harken back to punk rock, you know, and it's like this thing that started off as this complete dissection of like saying, you know, we do not want to take part in general society because we don't have a place there. We have no family in that. And roll the tape forward into the 90s and 2000s, and you know, punk rock has become a hot topic. You know, it's like it's not a effective political ideology anymore at all, and it makes me cringe too. But to the basis of what the concept is to these things, it's like, you know, I think the cool thing is just like you talked about earlier, the 90s is on its swing back again, and the people who didn't go through the cringe fest of modern 2000s rock music, and then that tagline got stuck in their mind, like these garbage bands. They were just playing loud, distorted guitars, and there was no soul behind it. There was no rock behind it. There was really just trying to write aggressive music that was pop music to sell albums, and that's not really what rock and roll is, you know. So the good thing is, I think, like as we move forward, that concept of rock, you know, can maybe go back to the root of what it maybe means, you know. I don't know.
No, I agree. Because I mean, even how often do you even hear the term like in regular cultural life, like that rocks?
Yeah.
Not as often as we used to, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because has this feeling like,
That's not cool.
yeah.
I'm bringing it back. I'm telling you. I'm trying to.
Great. I think that's fucking awesome. That's great.
Well, this has been great. I think you said you're not good interviewers, but I mean, we had plenty to talk about. I feel like it's been a good conversation.
That's your fault.
Yeah. You wrangled us in quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, some people can't do it.
See? I told you, I've been told I'm good at it.
I agree.
I think I'm trying my best. But I think you guys are great. So I don't know maybe those other people are the problem. Anyway,
we're the problem.
What would you like people to know? What else would you like people to know? I did see you have some shows coming up in July in California and Arizona. Anything else that you have coming up that you want people to know about?
Shows definitely the big thing, because we'll be doing that through July, and then in August.
Yeah, we'll be all the way up down the whole western side of the U.S. and up into Canada, and so just pay attention for tour dates. And then beyond that, new material.
Yeah, so we are actively working on stuff.
Any idea on when new music will come out that you want to tell people?
Soon.
TBD.
Yeah. How about maybe when you release something new, we'll have you come back on or something like that. Or I'll write something about it.
It'll be this year.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Be sooner than most might think.
Cool. And you have music on all the streaming platforms. You are all on Instagram, Creux Lies, CREUXLIES, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Any other social platforms you want to talk about while you're in the spotlight?
Live Journal, my
We started a TikTok, but we don't do anything on it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Hot or not?
Christian Mingle.
Farmers, isn't it only Farmers?
Farmersonly.com.
Younger Mifflin social media.
Woof.
Woof.
Oh my goodness.
Calico cut pants.
My face.
You guys are funny. All right. Thank you again. It's been great. And everyone check out Creux Lies, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen. Definitely check them out and check out their tour dates too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.